your knees. If you please, it's John Cleese.
Good morning, John.
Good morning, Chris.
How are you?
Oh, I'm old and tired.
Oh, no, he's old and tired, everyone.
I'm 84, Chris.
God, 84.
Give us a break.
How does it feel? Tell us about your mates. You're just talking about age and how we both are and things like that.
I had dinner with Palin and Gilliam.
Right.
I can't remember, Tuesday night, I think. And Mickey's just turned 81.
Yeah.
So I said it was 18 feet of python. Right. And it was good to see them again. We were very silly when we were together.
I know.
It's doing disgraceful for old people because old people are supposed to be sort of dignified.
But you can get more disgraceful as you get older. That's the joy of it, isn't it?
Well, it is really, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm married to one of the silliest women in the world.
Which helps.
Which helps a lot.
Yes.
It helps to keep you young.
Marry somebody. If you want to be happy,
you-
marry somebody silly.
I came in yesterday and I wondered where she was. And I was wandering around our tiny little flat off Sloane Square, and suddenly she jumps out at me from a cupboard. She's been hiding in the cupboard for at least 10 minutes.
Just for the gag.
Just for the gag.
I love it. There's nothing funnier than jumping out on somebody from a cupboard.
It's hilarious.
Doesn't get any funny. You can write all you like, can't you? But that's funny.
That's what sort of makes you giggle all the time.
Yeah.
And we also, before we met, we both the largest possible collection of stuffed animals. You name it, I've got 3 of them stuffed. I don't mean taxidermized.
I was going to say.
No, just soft toys.
Okay, that's different.
Yeah, we've got a most extraordinary collection. We've probably got 150, I would say, and it's a small flat. And
maybe it's not. Maybe it's massive. It just feels small. What's it like when you and the old Pythons get together for dinner? What is that like? Where do you go? What kind of time do you have? To be at that table, don't you think? Can you imagine being at that table?
We always go to Fisher's, which is an Austrian restaurant, Marylebone High Street.
Right.
We were traditional. I don't know why, and we just laugh a lot. I tease Michael all the time for making very, boring travel programs. And I ask old Terry Gilliam if he's got about to shoot another expensive flop. We're just terribly rude to each other all the time, which is very hard for the literal-minded to understand. But you see, what a problem in America is they don't understand that in England, the more we love someone, the more we insult them. And they can't put that together.
And it's very hard to explain to people, isn't it?
Very hard.
Yeah. And what do they give back to you? How do they give it back to you?
What are they?
What's your Achilles heel?
Well, I don't have one, you see. I have sort of achieved a spiritual perfection,
Right.
which is quite unusual for people from Western Superman.
Yeah. Tell us about your vertigo, because you just mentioned that when you
I've
come.
had it over a year, and I can't get rid of it. So whenever I'm walking down, I'm sort of touching the wall, almost making sure my big fear is going downstairs when there's no banister. So I went to see, I thought this was very funny, I went to see a top neurologist, and I knew him personally because a friend of mine was, and he explained it's all balance to do with ears and eyes and the pressure on the feet. That's a large part of it. But he said it can be very difficult to get rid of. So as I was leaving, he said, "John," and I turned around. I said, "Yes." He said, "Try not to fall over." And I said, "You have to be very highly qualified, don't you, to tell people not to fall over?" But I now say that to people when I say, "Bye-bye, try not to fall over."
Yeah.
It's a terribly funny
And you've got a
thing.
long way to go as well, haven't you?
Well, I've got a hell of a way to go. I've got
Jeez.
6'4" to go, you know.
So try not to fall over, and if you can't do that, just try to be shorter in case you do fall over.
Yeah, well, I don't. I mean, I crouch a bit now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I crouch. But have you noticed that the chairs are getting smaller? I cannot understand it. Most of the sofas I sit down now, you might as well sit on the floor.
I agree.
They're about
I agree.
Why are they trying to save money on wood or what?
I don't know. I don't know. And parking spaces are smaller.
Yes.
Yeah, the cars are getting bigger. The cars are bigger. So are the cars bigger and just the parking spaces are the same? But I think it's a double whammy. I think it's smaller car park, especially in supermarkets or underground car parks, and bigger cars.
And what about aeroplane seats?
Yeah, what about aeroplane seats?
Smaller and smaller. I flew first class internal in America recently, and it was just like economy 30 years ago.
Hellish.
And when I had to go and have a pee, which happens quite a lot at my age, I could hardly get in the toilet. When I was in the toilet, I had to sort of shuffle round in order to face in the right direction. And then I couldn't pee because standing up because the
wind.
No, the roof was sloping back so sharply that I was sort of limbo dancing in an attempt. So
I said they had the roof open. That would be a thing.
Yeah.
And it's the opposite on trains, isn't it? Because the loos on trains are massive.
Yeah, they are.
You couldn't move in. Why are the loos on trains so big? What's that about? I don't know where to go sometimes. Like, where's the toilet? It's somewhere in the distance over there. Oh my gosh.
Well, my wife and I have 3 cats. We have these huge Maine Coons, and one of them is so large now that we're having a saddle made for it so that my wife can move around the flat without having to walk.
We talked about cats earlier on and their names. So Katy Perry has got a cat called Kitty Purry, which we love. Ozzy Jane's mum and dad have a cat called Kitty and a cat called Catty, and their first cat was called Puss. Names of your cats?
Well, Heaven, which is odd, but he's some beautiful sort of Siamese markings. And then we've got this huge Felix, who is quite seriously is about 34 pounds in weight.
Wow.
And is absolutely enormous and is almost as fat as me. And he's a wonderful, affectionate cat. He just lies there hoping that someone will pet him. And then we just got a new one because we had a death in the family. Oh. We had Teddy, who was our beautiful tabby, died. My wife went to the gym in the morning and he was fine, and she got a phone call at the gym. He stopped breathing. Oh. And you suddenly realise what a loss it is. You know, in my stage act, I talk a lot about the importance of pets because I believe that they're really good for us because they teach us to live in the present. You see, when you're playing with a cat or a dog, what do you have, Chris?
We have a dog, rescue dog, yeah.
And when you're playing with your dog, you're in the present moment, which is where happiness is.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about the past or the future. You're just playing with it.
Totally.
And I said, and I believe that I would rather lose a friend than a pet. I mean, I'd rather lose Michael Palin, for example.
Over Terry Gilliam?
Over Terry?
Interesting.
Oh, no, wait a moment.
Well,
no, maybe not. No, I think Gilliam first.
Yeah.
Philip.
So you've got a spare now?
Well, I mean, Palin's
your spare.
Is very good company.
But either other than a cat?
What?
Both other than a cat.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, why not?
Both other than a cat. No. I don't quite get dogs. I mean, they're nice, but they're little Nazis, really, aren't they? They're just saying, who shall I bite next, master?
Our dog, because she's a rescue whippet, and she doesn't know she's a dog. She thinks she's a Pilates teacher. Yeah, very, very as cat as a dog can get.
Yes,
I would say.
Oh, well, somebody said to me recently, if you want to know the difference between cats and dogs, have you ever heard of a police cat?
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, you've got this whole thing about cats and dogs that I think John needs to know.
Yeah, so here's the difference, John,
by the way, Vassos is Greek.
Cats
you have
and dogs.
cats
We have a dog at home. We have a Labrador who couldn't be more dog.
Is that here in England or in Greece?
It's here in Barnes, in southwest London. And so, John, the difference between cats and dogs, if you're in a small flat in Sloane Square and you're alone with your dog and you sadly pass away, your dog will lie down next to you and will just pass away as well. You know, will just die.
Maybe howl.
Howl a bit, but it will stay with you.
Sort of cry for
help. So what I'm getting at is that a smart thing to do from the point of view of the dog?
It's not. I'm just giving you the difference between cats and dogs. So there's your dog, right?
You love the sheer stupidity.
Yeah. Whereas a cat, in the same circumstances, would eat you.
mean, after a while, it'd leave it a couple of days out of respect. Yeah.
What did you say, Chris?
It might not do it immediately.
Well, it wouldn't. I mean, it give you a couple of days grace, and then it would start eating you. Once it realised it couldn't open the tin of Kitty Cat.
Very practical.
Yeah. Well,
right?
you are right. I mean, that is practical.
Lying down and dying yourself. What does that achieve?
Now Benny wonders it.
Right, John, we need to sell some tickets, man. Fawlty Towers at London's Apollo Theatre. Fawlty Towers, come on! Fawlty flipping Towers, John Cleese. I mean, what a laugh.
Not that again.
Right, how did it end up on stage? I'm going to go backwards, but we'll start with what's going on right now.
Well, what's going on right now is that we are doing previews, which means that we're now rehearsing in front of an audience. And I went to the matinee yesterday, and I really mean this. It's unbelievably funny. I mean, Paul Nicholas at the Major, I was making too much noise. He's wonderful, and Manuel's wonderful. Basil, I have a nasty feeling he's slightly funnier than I am.
Oh, no.
I've asked him to take it down a bit. Well, I've asked him to take it down a bit and cut out some of the laughs, but he's still getting a lot. Sybil's quite wonderful. Polly's perfect. It's an extraordinary cast. It reminds you how many good actors we have in this country.
Isn't it interesting? Because I mean, now it's happening. It's obvious. But if you're, say you're, I mean, coming from anywhere in the world and you're of a certain age and you're coming to London for a couple of days, for a city break or for a week, or, obviously if you live in the UK anyhow, but if you're coming into London, who doesn't want to go and see Fawlty Towers on stage in London? I mean,
agree with
it's
you
a no-brainer.
Wholeheartedly. I think everybody should run out and buy 20 tickets.
So the way it's manifested is an amalgam of 3 original shows?
Quite right, Chris. Yeah. Well, there's Mrs. Richards, with the hearing aid, because everybody loved her. And then there was the Bernie Cribbins character, Mr. Hutchison. I thought Bernie's performance, if I had to give a sort of an Oscar or a piece of cheese or something like that to the best guest, I would say Bernie Cribbins, which is the food inspector. So we done that, and then of course we had to have the Germans. And then C.J. Ranger, who just did Fools and Horses, which ran for 4 years, thank you very much. She and I sort of fixed the script and made it all happen. So it's not one episode and then another, it's all 3 of them combined. So we start off with somebody from the first episode coming in, and then after 6 or 7 minutes, the first person from the second episode comes in. And then there's a very funny climax, which she arranged all the stories coming together at the same time.
So it ends in a perfect farce, almost.
Yeah, perfect farce.
Wow.
And I'll tell you what people love about it. It's almost nostalgia.
Of course it is.
Because it was a time when I think things were not quite so threatening and not quite so frantic, and people were happier and having a bit more fun.
Well, they probably were just as they are now. It's just that we didn't hear about them as much because they weren't in your face. They weren't fed down forced down your throat every second of the day.
Yes, that's probably true. Because I think in another 20 years, people were saying, was it really a good idea that we invented computers? But, I mean, now the largest form of crime is computer crime.
Yeah.
So, cybercrime. And that didn't exist 20 years ago.
Are there any nods to the future in the stage play?
I'm proud to say none at all. No, absolutely none at all.
So it's not contemporised in any way, shape or form?
No jokes about global warming in Torquay or anything
interesting.
like that. No.
I like the idea of it, a sort of a wedge of cheese as opposed to an Academy Award. I like that, don't you? Mm. Especially from John Cheese.
I was John Cheese.
This is a true story.
People always say, why did you... I didn't change it. My dad did. When he went in the army in 1915, he was fed up with being to be changed cheese to Cleese. hardly worth the effort, is it?
So, for people
if
listening...
you changed it to McDonald or Finkelstein, there would have been some point to it.
Yeah.
Cleese. Well, I was always called Cheese at school.
So our producer, Aussie Jane, is Jane Cheeseman. She's cheese man, even though she's a cheese lady.
She's a cheese person.
Cheese.
Oh.
Yeah. Cheese and biscuits.
I did come across, I honestly had a letter about 40 years ago from a Colonel Cheese, and his address was The Mousetrap.
No!
Yes!
Shut up!
No, isn't that right?
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So Fawlty Towers at London's Apollo Theatre, FawltyTowersWestEnd.com. Let's go back to when you wrote the first episode of the original series. Where did that happen? When did it come to you? The name. Because we can do the origin story now, because it's been so long.
Yeah. See, what happened was that I decided I didn't want to do any more Monty Pythons. So a lovely guy who ran Light Entertainment called Jimmy Gilbert, who'd been a director-producer when I started in television with David Frost, and with the two Ronnies. He directed those shows, The Frost Report. And he said, what do you want to do? We had lunch. And I said, I don't know, but I'd like to do something with Connie, because we laugh a lot, and I think we could come up with something. And the dear old BBC in those days just said, all right, I'll commission a program. Tell me what it's about. So I went back and talked to Connie, and after 20 minutes we said, let's set it in the hotel we stayed at in Torquay, because there really was a guy there. And I just remember the first time I ever saw him. He was staring into space, sitting at the reception desk. And I went up to speak to him, and he saw me coming, and because I was a guest, and of course he detested guests, being a hotelier, he just turned his back on me and started working and writing on a piece of paper, and I stood there thinking, he must know I'm here, and eventually I went, and he turned to me and said, oh, what? I mean, it's just magnificent. It's magnificent, isn't it? And he was so rude. We were having dinner
But that's dismissive, which is worse than rude, isn't it?
What's that again?
He was dismissive, which is worse than rude.
Awful, man. I remember it was extraordinary. Eric Idle, the first couple of days, because all the others went to the well-known hotel, Imperial Hotel in Torquay, and Connie and I stayed on for some reason. But when Eric was staying there, Eric Idle, he left his briefcase outside the door in the morning because the car was late, and then he got in the car and forgot all about it. So when he got back, he walked up to this guy and said, excuse me, oh, what is it now? He said, well, I left my briefcase here this morning. He says, yes, it's over there. And he points out of the front door of the hotel to a swimming pool with a big white wall behind it. He said, it's over there behind the white wall. And Eric said, what? He said, what? Oh, what do you want now? He said, well, why did you put it behind the white wall? He said, well, we thought it might be a bomb. And Eric, this was before any of the IRA bombings, you know. Eric said, a bomb? And I promise you he said this, he said, well, we've had some staff problems recently. Isn't that extraordinary?
It's so funny. Thank God you went there, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
No.
So he was contrary, he was cantankerous, and you just turned the volume up to 10, did you?
Just exaggerated a little bit, which is the basis of most comedy. And of course, the nice thing about a hotel is that every new episode, some new guests can arrive. You see, so you get lots of possibilities there. And also, everyone knows how a hotel's supposed to work, so you don't have to explain anything about how it works before people can laugh at it. But what was funny was that when we actually said, well, we were going ahead with it, I took the designer down to Torquay to show him the hotel. And we were very disappointed because the owner had gone. He'd retired. Oh, no. And eventually the Daily Mail tracked him down to his holiday home in Miami, and he wouldn't speak to them. But, and I love this, they managed to persuade his daughter, who'd never seen the show, to watch a couple of episodes. And she watched them, and at the end, she turned to the journalist, Daily Mail journalist, and said, "That's Dan."
Wow.
Really? Isn't that hilarious?
That's fantastic. Because you're 84 now, McCartney's 80, everybody's still rocking and rolling. You're still at it. You seem to be loving what you're doing. You seem to be loving life as much as you have for ages and ages. But of course, if we watch the Frost Report or TW3, that was the week that was, or Monty Python, you can. When you're watching one of those shows, you can smell the 60s. You can almost see what was going on around the TV screen. You can feel the sound of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones in the background and the smell of all that. How rock and roll was comedy in the 60s compared to contrasting with the music scene? Did you feel part of what was going on?
Well, they used to say we were the Beatles of comedy.
Did it feel like that?
No. We would. It was very simple, both with Python and with Fawlty Towers. We were just trying to be funny. It was very simple, because I annoyed a lot of intellectuals once by saying it's much harder to be funny than it is to be clever. There are very few people who can just make you laugh till you're weak, like Tommy Cooper. I mean, these are utter geniuses. I just wanted to be as funny as I possibly could. But I was making other stuff. I was making management training films, which were a different type of humor, which was sort of observational humor, much more realistic. Yeah. But it was an extraordinary time of creativity here in America.
Yeah. And they do say stand-up comedy is similar to that even now, because it hasn't really exploded yet. The first person who did stand-up comedy was, who would it have been? The American guy.
Yes, I know what you're talking about. Mort Sahl, late 50s,
right,
making jokes about Eisenhower.
Who dared to just stand up and speak.
Yeah, and then Bob Newhart.
Yeah,
and Shelley Berman. And
Lenny Bruce.
He
would be the first person to really go for it, I would imagine.
Well, he was the first really satirical one, or strongly satirical. I mean, Mike Nichols and Elaine May were absolutely wonderful.
I was thinking about this yesterday, John, on the way home, about the fact that the first person to ever just stand on stage, not in a play, not with a sketch, not in an opera or in a band, to walk on stage and just start telling jokes on their own, that was such a revolutionary thing to do, wasn't it?
Well, it was and it wasn't, because, I mean, we had a lot of very good comics like Charlie Chester. These names won't mean anything to young people. I saw Tony Hancock, who was one of our greatest sitcoms. I saw him in a show in Torquay, oddly enough, when I was about 15, and he came out on his own and did stuff to an audience. But there's something about something about stand-up which is just a bit different, because I do a show on my own, but my daughter, who is a really accomplished sitcom, sorry, I'm tired, as you can tell. Really
tired of me, not tired of anything else.
Not at all. Stand-up. She knows it, and she says there's a certain sort of area of materials. Comedy is stand-up comedy is about certain kind of things, and that's new, and it all started in, I think, the late 70s, because I remember going with the Pythons. We were shooting in Yorkshire in the early 70s, and we went to see a club, one of the working men's clubs, as they were called in those days, and a comic came out, and he was hysterical, and we'd never heard of him. And we met him afterwards and said, "We really love you. Why aren't you on television?" He said, "I don't want to be." He said, "Once I've done my act on television, people have seen it."
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it?
He said, "I can keep touring with this show year after year after year." Yeah. So the people didn't want to be on television. But then what happened was ITV realized that having a stand-up comedian was extremely cheap. Truthfully.
I know.
And then they jumped on, and then the whole thing developed in this country there. But I think in America, it was started more in clubs.
Yeah.
Comedy clubs, like the Hungry Eye in San Francisco. That was the very first one.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Because The Comedians was on ITV, that show, wasn't it? Just The Comedians, which was amazing.
It was very funny.
Oh,
They just
gosh.
came out.
Frank Carson,
Yes.
all those
and
guys.
Bernard Manning.
Oh my gosh, I know, one after another. So nowadays, if you wrote a pilot series that was as successful as Fawlty Towers, you'd be heaving a huge sigh of relief when the Netflix or whoever called it say, can we have a second series? Can we have a third series? But you did the opposite, didn't you, with Fawlty Towers?
Connie and I both felt after the second series that we'd done the best that we could do. And that if we did a third series, people would say, oh, it was very funny, but it wasn't as good as the first two series. And it wouldn't have been, because that was the best we could do. So we just didn't see the reason to do it then was money. But I was making money with other things, so we never took it any further until I was approached by Phil McIntyre, who's promoting the show at the moment, and he asked if he could buy the stage rights for it. And shortly after that, we did it in Australia, and believe it or not, in 2016. And it was a great show in Australia. And then, of course, for some reason, there was a delay, and then there was COVID.
And did I hear you talking about a musical version, or was that just you messing around in an interview?
Well, no, I'm writing a musical version of Wanda.
Oh, Wanda, that was
Fish
it.
Called Wanda. Camilla and I have
gosh.
been working on the book of that for ages.
Isn't it great? From this window here, you can see that apartment, can't you?
Yes.
Do you know the bit where he holds Kevin Klein? Kevin Klein holds you upside down.
That's
over
right.
there, isn't it?
And I'll tell you something odd
He's
about
just over there.
I'm not going to apologise. I'm really sorry. And then the camera goes around and you're upside down hanging out of a window.
And Charlie Crichton, who was this wonderful old director, he directed comedies at the Ealing Studios.
Wow.
His first directing was with Alistair Sim film about kids playing on a London bomb site, and that was 1946. He was 77 when he shot that. And he said to me when I wrote that scene, he said, oh, you said, finally, you've written something visual. And it was lovely because I used to make those management training films, and he used to direct them. And I said, Charlie, we have to make a film one day. And then we sat down, and the first meeting about Wanda, he said, well, what ideas have you got, old boy? And I said, well, I want to have a scene where someone with a terrible stutter is trying to get a piece of information out that's really important and really urgent, and he can't say a word. He can't get a word out. And Charlie said, all right. And he said, I want to run someone over with a steamroller. And that was how we started with those two ideas.
It's a great film, isn't it? Come on.
Control
round of applause, please, for A Fish Called Wanda. If you haven't seen A Fish Called Wanda, it's the perfect film for this weekend. Wow. John, what a life. What a life. You've had your highs and your lows and your twos and your fro's, because that's what life is like. But
all my lows have been to do with women, haven't they?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the ingredients
divorces. It cost me. Those three cost me 25 million.
I know. But fortunately, you had the talent to pay for it, so it's all right. And it pushed you to where you are now.
Well, the last one was 20 million, and it was worth every penny.
Yeah. There's a phrase in recovery in AA recovery, and they say that if it doesn't work for you, don't worry. We'll give you a full refund of your misery.
What a wonderful organisation that is.
Gosh, tell me about it.
And the extraordinary thing is it's doing good all over the world. It's one of the least organised. I don't mean it's disorganised, but it's sort of handed over to people just to do it.
Trust.
And nobody's there telling them how to.
Yeah, and you can't change it. It is now as it has always been.
Yeah, and I've been to some of those meetings because I wasn't an alcoholic myself, but I've been in contact with them, and they have these meetings for people who are dependents of alcoholics or something like that. Yeah. And what strikes me about that is that the guys in the group and the girls in the group, the people who've been alcoholics, they're so tough.
Yeah.
With anyone who gives them BS, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're really tough, and they were much more effective than the psychiatrists for years.
100%. So, 84 years young, what a life. I'm sure you're entirely grateful. Would that be right?
Yes. No, I've had a very good, but I sometimes think I've had a very easy life. You know, I've never been in a war. I've never been a refugee or anything like that.
Course.
And I lived in a country which had the rule of law. I don't like the idea of going places where there isn't a rule of law. I mean, imagine going to Russia and, you know, and saying something rude about Putin. I mean, you'd never sip a cup of tea again, would you?
No, you wouldn't, absolutely. And where you sit now, you know, still working with Wanda, is it at the laptop? Is it, you know, was it a typewriter back in the day? Has that changed? When you sit down, do you feel ageless? Do you feel timeless? Because once you're in flow, you're always sort of drawing from the same well, aren't you?
That's right. That's right. Well, I used to write it straight onto a typewriter, and now, which amuses everyone, I write with a propelling pencil in an exercise book.
Beautiful.
Because I love that, because if I want to know what I thought of 5 minutes ago, I can find it in a second. I don't have to start scrolling backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
And when I'm plotting a movie, I get one of those huge sketchbooks that they sell in
A3.
offices. Yeah, huge. And then top left is anything at the beginning of the show.
There you go.
Bottom
That's
right.
what I write on.
That's
The big
side.
stuff.
Yeah. And that's much better because you can see it all. You see, I think writing on a computer screen is rather a small screen. If you have a great piece of drawing paper, you can see exactly where everything is.
Yeah.
And that's what Connie and I used to do.
And it can't disappear into thin air, which I've had happen to me a few times. 20,000
Yes.
words, 40,000
I
words.
know.
It's gone. Where? It's just gone. No, it can't have gone. No, it's gone. And then you walk around for 3 days thinking it hasn't gone. No, it's still gone. It's actually more gone. And you've gone by the looks of it.
Yeah, gone forever.
Oh.
Yeah.
John, we're out of time, but I wish we
Well,
weren't.
it doesn't matter. We go on talking anyway.
Okay.
Okay.
Fine. No, can't. No, we can, but we're not going to. All right, Fawlty Towers, westend.com. Can we just hear the biggest round of applause ever for John Cleese, please?
Rotten.
Thank you, John.
Rotten. Awful. Pathetic.
What a joy. What a treat. What a pleasure. What an honour. John Cleese, everyone!
Hey.
Thank you, John. Cheers, mate. Beautiful.
Virgin Radio.